New acquisition, new initial test run. This is a Crown fan, 12-inch oscillator. It's pretty interesting. I haven't seen too many of these around. I don't think they're exactly rare, but not the most common thing either. It appears to be from, it kind of screams the late 80s, but I'm not too sure, and it kind of looks like a Taiwanese-made fan. Maybe we'll find out in a bit. So of course, this being the initial test run, this fan is fresh in the house, so I have not tested it yet. Quick condition assessment shows that it's not in the greatest condition. The plastic is pretty heavily sun-baked and quite a bit of dust accumulation on the blades, and the grills are not the most shiny either. The chromes, let's see. It's partially corroded and partially just caked with dirt. But overall, not too bad. This it's non-polarized cord. Prongs are a little bent, but not too bad. I think this will run. So let's plug this in and give it its first test run. Okay, so I've recorded this at the end of the video, but I'll throw it in somewhere in the middle of the video. Here's the bottom of the fan. It's pretty rusted. This is I think a piece of like galvanized or zinc plated metal, and it's pretty corroded, and the information is right there. And you can barely tell what it says, but I was able to make out it says 120 volts, 60 hertz, and 0.37 amps. Right there. There's a model number here, it says YL and some numbers, but it's too rusted for me to really see what it is. There's some numbers here. I'm not really sure if that means anything, but that's what's going on the bottom of the fan. Missing 2 feet. Got it plugged in, and looking at the fan again, I've noticed that there's quite a bit of dust bunnies that might come flying out at me. So hopefully it doesn't happen, but let me orient it this way. Alright, let's give it a test. There's low. Seems to work good. That's a quiet fan. Oh. What in the world? What? It just turned off by itself. Well, that's not good. Let's try medium. Uh-oh. We might have a problem here. Uh-oh, that's not good. Well, that's a first. I've never had a fan fail the initial test run. I'm not sure what happened. Alright, let me see if I can diagnose this real quick. Okay, so looks like we might have a capacitor failure here, because if I apply power to it and you listen carefully, you can hear a faint buzz from the motor. So that's off, turn it back on. Off again. So this is the exact same problem that my Panasonic oscillating fan showed when I acquired it. And that fan, what happened was the capacitor wire had become disconnected from the motor. So it was working just fine. Well, the bearings were seized, but the fan was perfectly fine, but the capacitor had become disconnected. So my thought with this fan is either the capacitor just gave up as I was making the video, or the wire somehow got disconnected somewhere. So that's the quick diagnosis. I don't think I can really go any further than that right now. It's too dark in there, but yeah, well, this kind of took an unexpected turn. Didn't expect to go into a diagnosis in this video, but that's what happens when you do a test run live on camera. Something's bound to happen when you acquire so many fans. Okay, so I had to investigate further. I was itching to find out what the problem was, and I still don't know what the problem is, because, so first of all, I took the motor housing off, and we have the motor, and I'm testing the capacitor, and the meter is showing 2.1 microfarads, and this capacitor is rated for 2 microfarads, so this capacitor is perfectly healthy. There's nothing wrong with it. And also, before I continue, maybe this is a date code, 83, so it's not a late 80s fan. It's an early 80s fan, if this is a date code. I'm not sure, maybe it's the 19th week of 1983? Who knows? But anyways, coming back to the fan, I guess the only way to diagnose this fan is just to follow the wires, because if the capacitor is fine, chances are the problem is there's a disconnection somewhere in the motor open circuit, so it's not receiving the power or the capacitor in the circuit there, because if I turn it on again, maybe you guys can hear it better this time. There's off again, I'll turn it back on. Just sits there and hums, and it's not the bearing problem, because if I pick up the fan, you can see the bearings are free. So the capacitor appears to be the issue. Well, not the capacitor, but it's not being applied to the motor circuit somehow. So looks like I might have to spend some time investigating further. That's gonna have to be a different video. This was supposed to be just an initial test run, but I was just so curious to find out, to see if I can maybe diagnose and fix it on the spot, but this might be a bit more of a serious problem than it seems. So let me get back to you guys in a bit. Okay, so I spent another 5 minutes or so looking over the fan, and I can't really notice any visible faults with it. So here's where I was looking the most. This is where the wires from the base and the capacitor solder onto the motor windings. There's a fiber board there, and the wires kind of solder onto there, and below it the windings come in. You can see there's one of the strands there. And I checked to make sure, just visually, that the connections were okay, and they seem to be fine. I don't really notice any obvious disconnections in the circuit. So this might have to be another video worth of diagnosing and fixing, assuming I can find what's wrong with it. The worst case scenario is the disconnection in the circuit is somewhere inside the motor windings. And that would be, I don't know if that's even within my competence of repair, depending on how buried the open circuit is. Hopefully it's nothing too bad, but it's definitely not something that I'm going to be doing in this video. This was meant to be a quick initial test run, but turned out to be a bit more than that. So I guess we'll have to come back to this fan another time, and hopefully I'll be able to figure out what's wrong with it. Oh, that's just the multimeter. Battery's, I think, low. Hopefully I'll be able to figure out what's wrong with it. If you guys have any ideas on what it could be, feel free to let me know in the comments. I'll definitely check it out. And until the next video, whenever I get back to this thing, this has been the Crown 12-inch oscillating fan. Maybe it was just camera shy, that's why I decided to quit. Anyways, we'll have to see this fan one more time in another video, so it'll be back.